intel on the Philippine markets and the economy. In the headlines, Habemos Papam, we have a new pope. Cardinal Robert Francis Prevost takes the name Leo XIV as he becomes the first American pope. U.S. President Donald Trump announces a full trade pact with the UK, the first of its kind since the April 2 tariffs. Could this be the start of many other deals, including with the Philippines? We speak with former U.S. Ambassador Gregory Slayton live from Dallas. And net foreign outflows and weaker net value turnover dominate local stocks in the first quarter. We take a deep dive into risk assets in the run-up to the May 12 polls and speak with Robert Dan Roses, Group Chief Economist at SM Investments Corporation.
Habemus Papam. Habemus Papam.
Have a new pope. Robert Francis Cardinal Prevost has been elected to lead the Roman Catholic Church, taking the name Leo XIV. He becomes the first pope from the U.S., upending the long-standing assumption that American cardinals are shunned from the helm of the church. The white smoke rose from the chimney of the Sistine Chapel shortly after midnight Manila time. He won after 4 rounds of voting, one of the quickest conclave elections in modern history. Leo stood before 100,000 people waiting at St. Peter's Square. In his first words, Leo echoed the call of his predecessor Francis for a church that is engaged with the modern world.
La pace sia con tutti voi. Dobbiamo cercare insieme come essere una chiesa missionaria, una chiesa che costruisce i ponti, il dialogo, sempre aperta a ricevere, come questa piazza con le braccia aperte, a tutti coloro che hanno bisogno della nostra carità, la nostra presenza, il dialogo, l'amore.
After being introduced, Leo took the time to pray alone inside the Sistine Chapel. He was greeted by cardinals who elected him to the church's top post. Trump led Americans in congratulating Leo.
What greater honor could there be? And we were a little bit surprised, but very happy. It was just a great, absolutely great honor.
The new pope visited the Philippines in numerous occasions, including in Cebu in 2004 and Manila in 2010. Earlier, News 5 correspondent Mon Gualvez reported live from the Vatican following the announcement of the new pope. Here's his report on the developments from the ground.
Even during the conclave or the process na habang nag-aantay nga tayo ng Santo Papa, the people waiting around or within the St. Peter's Square are really excited, happy, and in high spirit. Positive talaga yung energy dun sa ground. But then, when we saw this white smoke that billowed out from the chimney of the Sistine Chapel, mas dumoble yung saya at excitement ng mga tao. Tila the Vatican has stopped during that time dahil, to be honest, hindi talaga inaasahan yung paglabas ng smoke before 6 in the evening nung mga panahon na yung kahapon dito sa Vatican, dahil nga kapag walang lumabas na smoke, technically mag-move na lang ng 7 o'clock, pero bigla na lang may lumabas na smoke dito nga sa chimney, kaya yung mga tao, marami mga nagtakbuhan towards St. Peter's Basilica. everyone wanted to go nearer the St. Peter's Basilica para nga makareceive ng blessing. At the same time, ma-witness personally, no, at makita ng malapitan kahit papano itong ang bagong Santo Papa who happens to be Pope Leo the 14th. So yung excitement, saka kahit nga umabot na ng madaling araw ay talagang parang gising na gising pa ang lahat ho ng mga nandito halos sa lalo yung nasa St. Peter's Square dahil kanya-kanyang picture pa rin. And again, the description might be in high spirit pa ang mga tao dito sa Vatican. At nung in-announce na yung kanyang pangalan, marami sa mga katabi ko kasi ako yung nakapwesto, no, sa mga taong naghihintay nga talaga ng announcement. Halos lahat talaga yung mga nasa paligid ko nagtatanong, sino raw kasi they don't have an idea, no, with the newest pope ng Catholic Church. And then yun nga, talagang they keep on asking, and some had their research pa, no, pero nawala kasi na signal that time, kaya talaga medyo nahirapan. So they are not expecting the Pope or Pope Leo the 14th be the next pope or be the next leader of the Catholic Church, no. So one thing is for sure, they are hoping na talagang maging maayos ang leadership ng bagong Santo Papa towards the issues concerning the Catholic Church or facing itong mga issues na ito ng simbahan.
After U.S. Cardinal Robert Prevost was named the new pope, News 5's Mon Gualvez spoke to some Filipinos at the Vatican who witnessed the moment unfold.
The feelings here, unbelievable. I pray for my family and for my daughter, Magdalena.
Pero maamo ang kanyang mukha, the way I look at him, and he looks like he's a very humble priest. I don't know him personally, but I am praying for him that he's going to put the name of Jesus in every heart, in every mind, because we need Jesus in these difficult times.
The U.S. and the U.K. have reached a trade deal, the first since Trump launched a barrage of tariffs on allies and adversaries alike. The U.S. has lowered import taxes on U.K. goods to the baseline 10%. British steel and aluminum will be exempted from the 25% levy, while vehicles will face lower duties of 10%. In return, Britain will remove tariffs on some U.S. beef imports and ethanol. Neither government has said when the pact will take effect.
The deal includes plans that will bring the United Kingdom into the economic security alignment with the United States. That's the first of its kind. So we have a big economic security blanket, and that's very important.
Now, of course, we are the first country to secure such a deal with the United States. And in an era of global insecurity and instability, that is so important.
Meantime, if talks go well between the U.S. and China this weekend, import taxes on Chinese goods could come down. That was Trump's assurance yesterday, Thursday, adding that the 145% tariff imposed on China would not get any higher. Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent and U.S. Trade Representative Jameson Greer will meet with Chinese Vice Premier He Lifeng in Switzerland over the weekend to discuss lowering tariffs and other trade matters. U.S.-UK trade deal lift markets this Thursday. The Dow up by 0.6%. The S&P 500 rises by nearly 0.6% as well, and the Nasdaq gains over 1%. The benchmark 10-year Treasury yields have settled to 4.37%, the biggest one-day gain in a month. As for gold prices, they've retreated to $3,296 per troy ounce. Taking a look at the U.S. markets, it's pointing to a slight decline when the markets open later tonight. So you can see all the down arrows there, with the Dow down about 0.25%, along with the Nasdaq down by about 0.1%. Let's take a look at the Asian markets. It appears that they're looking mixed at the open here. ASX 200 down about 0.1%, but the Kospi and the Nikkei 225 are both higher by about 0.3%. Let's take a look at how Philippine markets are trading in the first minutes of trading. And we're seeing an up market here opening at 6,441. Stock market snapped its two-day streak to close lower by over 1% on Thursday. As for the Philippine peso, we're seeing that open a tad weaker at 55.72 the dollar. Peso closed yesterday weaker at 55.625 against the greenback. So could the trade deal between the U.S. and UK be the start of many more deals, including with the Philippines? Follow-up meetings with the U.S. are in the works as the government aims to lower reciprocal tariffs on the country's exports. With us now for more, live from Dallas, is former Ambassador Gregory Slayton, diplomat, Silicon Valley entrepreneur, and education advocate. So good to see you, Greg. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you so much, Kathy. It's great to be with you. Magandang umaga po sa iyo lahat.
Magandang umaga sa inyo. What do you make of the first American Pope, if I may ask?
Well, it's great honor. It's wonderful to see the Catholic bishops elevate an American. Of course, he's also a Peruvian by citizenship, dual citizenship. Let's just hope and pray for him and for the Catholic Church that it is a time of peace and unity. And as that wonderful Filipino lady said, bringing Jesus to every heart and every home.
It is. I mean, you've served two American presidents, George W. Bush and Barack Obama, right? And you've worked with folks on
Yes.
both sides of the aisle. So if the negotiation is a process, how best do we lay on the patience, the wisdom, and the propensity to be prepared for the unexpected twists and turns?
Well, in terms of the reciprocal tariffs, I believe that the Philippines should be high on the list because the Philippines, by all measures, is one of our longest and most important allies. Obviously, there's been a very close relationship, partnership for many decades before the Second World War, and then American Armed Forces with Filipinos liberated the Philippines back in 1945, and we've been close friends ever since. So I believe the Philippines' goal should be the same type of pact that the United Kingdom just got, 10%, and that it should draw the United States and the Philippines even closer together as economic and military partners.
Right, that military partnership is so important. I mean, you've been back in the Philippines many times since your UP Diliman days, where you took your Fulbright scholarship in Asian Studies. And you must have seen that the mutual defense treaty partnership between the U.S. and the Philippines have thrived through those years. So as a diplomat, what leverage does this give the Philippines as trade negotiations progress?
Well, it gives leverage because obviously American troops are based on Philippine soil. And okay, it's not quite the same as it was back when I was living in the Philippines, Olongapo and Subic Bay, but it's still a very important piece of the free world's defense strategy. And you look, unfortunately, at the conflicts just in the South China Sea and Chinese ships, Chinese military ships ramming Filipino ships that are in, by all definition, Filipino territory. So I think it's a vital partnership for both the United States, all of our free allies around the world, and the Philippines, and I hope to see it strengthen and prosper.
You were just here in Manila at the start of the month, so you must have seen the election campaigning in full swing and all the dancing on TikTok that come along it.
Yeah.
What do you make of
Yeah.
the state of Philippine democracy as you've seen it, as an American looking from outside in?
Well, by definition, democracies are flawed, and that's because human beings are flawed. So here in America, we've got plenty of issues and challenges with our democratic system, as do all democratic countries. However, when you compare it to the alternative, the type of dictatorship that has existed in Russia for over 25 years, clearly democracy and the freedoms we enjoy in the Philippines and the United States, freedom of speech, freedom of assembly, freedom of religion, etc., those do not exist in Russia. They certainly do not exist in China. So I think, we can all say that as much as it's a challenge to have a democracy, it's a whole lot better than the alternative.
And you're invested in Philippine education, recently giving a master class at the Life Academy International College in Pasig on
Yes.
succeeding in the innovation economy. You want the school to be the Harvard of the Philippines. Why innovation and why the Filipino youth?
Well, I really do. And I believe that LAIC, not right away, but in 5 or 10 years, can be a faith-based Harvard. That's a big difference. I am a Harvard graduate. I'm a professor at Harvard from time to time. One thing I love about LAIC is they focus on entrepreneurship. And one of the things I've always seen in the Philippines is the Filipinos are naturally entrepreneurial. But like anything else, you can be naturally talented to play basketball or whatever, but you need the training. You need the discipline, you need the mentors and the network. And that's what LAIC promises to give to its students. By the way, application is still open for this coming year, and I hope people out there, both moms and dads, we have 4 children, and we took great care to make sure they went to what we all believe were the right schools. I hope that moms and dads and students in 12th grade will think about LAIC as a potential option.
We look forward to having you back here in Manila. Gregory, I'm sure that's not going to be very far away. Thank you so much for joining us, Ambassador Slayton, for your insights. Gregory Slayton there in Dallas. You're watching Money Talks. Coming right up, we'll take a look at market action on the first quarter leading to the midterm polls. And we'll take a look at the latest SWS survey 3 days before Monday's election. Keep it here on One News. Welcome back to Money Talks. I'm Cathy Yang. The Philippine economy grew by a weaker than forecast 5.4% in the first quarter. Latest data from the Philippine Statistics Authority shows GDP growth slowed from 5.9% a year ago. This was mainly because of faster public spending and household consumption. It also missed the 5.8% forecast from the Business World poll of analysts, but slightly improved from last quarter's 5.3%. Department of Economy, Planning and Development Undersecretary Rosemary Edilion says the results fell short of the government's target of 6 to 8% for the year. With this, she said the economy needs to grow by at least 6.2% in the remaining quarters to meet at least the lower end of the target. For his part, Security Bank Chief Economist Angelo Taninco says the weaker growth was because of low business confidence and a wider trade gap, despite strong household spending and government expenditures. Still, he expects growth to pick up in the current quarter. Security Bank projects GDP to reach 5.9%, boosted by midterm election spending. Outstanding loans of universal and commercial banks rose by 11.8% year-on-year in March, slower than February's 12.2%. That's according to preliminary data from the Bangko Sentral ng Pilipinas. Loans to residents, excluding reverse repurchase agreements, grew slower at 12.3%, down from 12.6% in February. Meanwhile, loans to non-residents fell by 5.6%, following a 3.2% decline the previous month. Also from the Bangko Sentral, preliminary data showed domestic liquidity reached 18.2 trillion pesos in March, growing 6.1% year-on-year. This was slightly slower than February's 6.3%. Domestic claims rose by over 10%, driven by an increase in claims in the private sector. Meanwhile, net claims in the national government jumped to 8% from 5.9% because of increased borrowings. Net foreign assets grew by 2.5% from higher reserves. However, banks' NFA declined because of higher foreign currency denominated payables. Looking ahead, the Bangko Sentral says it will continue to align liquidity and lending conditions with its price and financial stability objectives. On this final trading day, before the May 12 midterm polls, Money Talks consulted economists on how the latest numbers on inflation, jobs, and GDP would figure in voters' minds. Security Bank's Angelo Taninco said inflation remains a top economic issue for voters, describing it to be a negative for administration bets. As despite year-to-date inflation already is at a low level, the 3-year cumulative inflation is still at record highs and has eroded consumers' purchasing power. Further, Taninco adds the uptick in the underemployment rate suggests a worsening of job quality, and this is consistent with the erosion of purchasing power. In this regard, the latter may be a factor for voters' preference. In contrast, BPI's lead economist June Neri believes indicators have improved versus year-ago levels from inflation to unemployment, and the drop in rice prices had led inflation to trend lower. So if these were the criteria voters based their decision on, adds Neri, then the administration bets have a bigger chance of winning. So how did the local equity markets pan out in the run-up to the May 12 midterm poll? Let's look back to 2019 on May 10th. The day before the midterm elections that year. The local market was up 3.7% year-to-date. Net value turnover averaged 6.56 billion pesos per day, and the market posted net foreign inflows north of 40 billion pesos. In contrast, 24 hours ago, just 2 trading days away before the elections, the local market is down over 2.1% year-to-date. Net value turnover weaker, and the market had net foreign outflows north of 9.8 billion pesos. For Japheth Tantiangco of PhilStocks Financial, the numbers show investors are more cautious this year compared to the 2019 midterm elections. There's the slower growing Philippine economy and the uncertainties in global trade between the U.S. and the rest of the world. Back in 2019, the U.S. was targeting only China. With us now for more is Robert Dan Roses, the Group Chief Economist at SM Investments Corporation. So good to see you. Welcome to the show, Dan.
Hi, Cathy. Glad to be here. Good to see you again.
All right, so what do you make of the diverging market action the first quarter leading to the midterm poll when you compare that to 2019 and this year?
Okay, so the market divergence between the first quarter leading into the midterm elections in 2019 versus 2025 is clear and meaningful. So in early 2019, markets were moving cautiously because of heightened uncertainty. We had geopolitical tensions back then as well, and then you have mixed investor sentiment that was reflected in volatile foreign fund flows. No? So, what the analyst that we showed earlier was saying, the US was only targeting China. But there were threats as well that the US will likely impose tariffs on other countries as well. Fast forward to the same period this year, the market seems to be more shifty and cautious, no? But there's some degree of certainty because at least what the US is saying is that they'll be targeting such and such country already. So it's clear which countries will be hit by the tariff impositions versus what was happening in 2019. And then add to that solid domestic economic fundamentals, we're seeing growth, which may be slower, but still within that 5% range. We have inflation going down. We have improved investor confidence.
Let's take a
Foreign-
closer look at those forecasts because I know you've made some slight revisions to your forecast following the
Right.
data dump that we've had on inflation, jobs, and GDP. Take a look at this screen here. All those numbers, what has changed and why did you change them?
Okay, so our revised forecasts align with scenarios that we have formulated. So it's not a cast in stone number. Well, we do have several scenarios. So far, from the data dump that we saw this week, we project GDP growth to be at 5.9%, inflation at 2.3%, unemployment 4.5%. We've trimmed our inflation forecast from an earlier estimate of around 2.8 to 3%, following the recent CPI data that showed clear moderation, particularly in food prices. GDP forecast was slightly adjusted downward by 0.2 percentage points. We had to consider first quarter's temporary supply chain disruptions, which we saw in the numbers already. And we anticipate that resolving only by the third quarter, if at all. So these forecasts reinforce actually the Philippines' position still as a leading ASEAN economy amid a challenging global backdrop.
Got that, the silver lining as well in the numbers. Thank you, Dan Roses of SM Investments Corporation joining us. Ex-CIS Representative Erwin Tulfo tops the final SWS senatorial survey for the May 12 elections. Tulfo got 45% support in the poll conducted between May 2 and 6. Closely behind him is Senator Bongo at 43%, who's been the front runner for the past 2 months. Most of those included in the probable winner circle are part of the administration slate. Also in the Magic 12 are former Senate President Tito Soto, Senator Lito Lapid, broadcaster Ben Tulfo, and former Senator Ping Lacson. Likewise in the list, Makati Mayor Abby Binay, Senator Bato de la Rosa, Las Piñas Representative Camille Villar, and Senators Pia Cayetano, Bong Revilla, and Amy Marcos. The survey, commissioned by Strat-Based Group, was conducted nationwide from May 2 to 6 with 1,800 respondents. Tune in to One News on Monday for our comprehensive midterm coverage. We will give you on-ground updates, in-depth analysis, and expert insights. It will begin on May 12 Election Day at 5 a.m. Manila time and will continue for 31 hours until 12 noon the next day. Money Talks will be back by Wednesday, May 14th. That is it for Money Talks. I'm Cathy Yang. Catch us again Wednesday, 9:30 a.m. here on One News. Have a great day ahead.